Platform 9 3/4 encounters. King's Cross Station was exactly as chaotic as Hagrid had warned it would be, a seething mass of muggles rushing about with their wheeled suitcases and takeaway coffees, completely oblivious to the magical world that existed parallel to their own. Harry pushed their trolley through the crowd, Hedwig hooting indignantly at every jostle, while scanning the barriers between platforms 9 and 10 for any sign of the magical entrance Hagrid had described. Packed with muggles, of course, came a voice from nearby, speaking in what sounded like Arabic. Harry turned to see a large family group gathered near the barrier, their appearance immediately catching the eye in the sea of typical British commuters. The family patriarch was a tall, thin man with olive skin and kind eyes, his greying hair covered by a small white kufi. He wore traditional robes that somehow managed to look both wizard-like and distinctly Middle Eastern, embroidered with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer slightly in the station's fluorescent lighting. Next to him stood a woman completely covered in a black niqab, only her eyes visible, but those eyes crinkled with warmth as she spoke in rapid Arabic to what appeared to be her children. "Now, Ramad," the woman was saying in accented English, her voice muffled but clearly maternal, "you have packed the prayer rug, yes. And the halal snacks? You know how terrible the food can be at these British schools." Harry found themselves openly staring at the family, not out of prejudice but out of sheer fascination. In the predominantly white, aggressively normal world of Privet Drive, they'd rarely encountered such obvious diversity, and certainly never in connection with magic. "Mama, you packed enough food to feed half of Hogwarts," replied a boy about Harry's age, his skin the same warm olive tone as his father's, with striking red hair that looked almost auburn in the station lighting. He was tall and lanky, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that read, "Inshallah I'll pass my OWLS. Besides, I checked with the house elves, they can prepare halal meals." "House elves?" The woman's voice rose in alarm. "They are not forcing slave labor on these poor creatures, are they? Because if they are, Habibi, you will be making your own meals." "No, Mama, well, actually, that's complicated. But they're not technically slaves." Harry couldn't help but smile at the familiar sound of a teenager trying to explain something they didn't fully understand themselves to a concerned parent. It was such a normal interaction that it made their chest ache a little with longing. "Excuse me," Harry said, approaching the family with their trolley. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you by any chance looking for platform 9 3/4? The woman in the niqab turned toward them, and Harry could see her eyes widen slightly in recognition. "You are Harry Potter," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "The boy who lived." "Actually," Harry said carefully, "I prefer they heathen pronouns. And I'm not sure about the whole boy who lived thing anymore." Without missing a beat, the woman nodded. "Of course, forgive me. I am Amina Al-Waziri, and this is my husband Farid. We are most honored to meet you." She gestured to the red-haired boy. "This is our son Ramad. He will be starting Hogwarts this year as well." Harry felt a surge of relief at the casual acceptance. "Nice to meet you all. And yes, I'm looking for the platform. I'm a bit lost, to be honest." "First time?" Ramad asked, grinning. "Same here. Mama's been giving me instructions for the past hour, but I think she's more nervous than I am." "I'm not nervous," Amina protested, but her hands were clearly fidgeting with her robes. "I am simply thorough in my preparations." "There is a difference." Farid chuckled, a warm sound that made Harry think of what a real father's laugh might sound like. "Your mother has been preparing for this day since your Hogwarts letter arrived. She has enough supplies in your trunk to establish a small halal restaurant." "Daba." Ramad protested, but he was grinning. "It is true," Farid continued, winking at Harry. "She has packed prayer rugs, a compass for finding Mecca, enough halal snacks to feed an army, 3 copies of the Quran, and a detailed schedule of prayer times for every day of the school year. And extra hijabs," added a voice from behind them. Harry turned to see several more children, all with the same distinctive red hair and olive skin. "Don't forget the extra hijabs, in case any of the girls at school want to try wearing one." Amina's eyes crinkled with what Harry assumed was a smile behind her niqab. "Knowledge and understanding begin with exposure, Layla." If these British children have never seen a hijab before, how can they learn to respect it? Harry found themselves genuinely impressed by the family's approach to diversity. That's actually really thoughtful. Our mother believes in building bridges, Ramad explained. She says that most prejudice comes from ignorance, and ignorance can be cured with education and kindness. A philosophy I imagine you understand well, Amina said gently to Harry. From what I have read, you too know what it is like to be different, to be misunderstood. Harry felt their throat tighten unexpectedly. Yeah. I guess I do. Then you know that we must support each other, Amina continued. The world can be unkind to those who do not fit into its narrow definitions of normal. But Allah teaches us that diversity is a gift, not a burden. Farid nodded. The Quran says, "We have created you from male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you may know one another." He looked at Harry with kind eyes. I believe this includes all the ways people can be different from each other. Harry felt tears prick at their eyes. After weeks of fighting with the Dursleys, this casual acceptance from strangers felt like a lifeline. Thank you, they said quietly. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. We all need to hear it sometimes, Amina replied warmly. Now, shall we figure out this platform situation together? I confess, the idea of running at a brick wall makes me quite anxious. The letter said to run straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10, Ramad said, consulting a piece of parchment. Don't stop and don't be scared you'll crash into it. Subhanallah, Amina muttered. And I thought Muggle transportation was dangerous. Harry couldn't help but laugh. I think that's the point. If you're not sure you want to be there, you shouldn't be able to get through. Like a test of faith, Farid mused. Interesting. Very Islamic, actually, the idea that true commitment requires a leap of faith. Baba, you find Islamic parallels in everything, Ramad said with fond exasperation. Because they are everywhere, my son. Truth is universal. Harry watched the family dynamic with fascination. Despite their obvious differences from the typical British family, despite the cultural and religious elements that would probably send Vernon Dursley into apoplectic fits, they seemed so normal. Loving. Functional. Would you like to go together? Amina asked Harry. Sometimes these things are less frightening when you have someone beside you. Harry nodded gratefully. I'd like that very much. They positioned themselves in front of the barrier, Harry and Ramad with their trolleys, the rest of the family gathered around them. Farid had apparently decided to document the moment, pulling out what looked like a magical camera. On 3, Ramad said, gripping his trolley handle. 1, 2. Wait. Amina called out. Bismillah. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Mama, I don't think Allah is particularly concerned with magical train platforms, Ramad said, but he was smiling. Allah is concerned with all our journeys, her baby. Now, 3. They ran forward together, and Harry felt the familiar sensation of passing through the magical barrier, like walking through a curtain of cool water. On the other side, platform 9 3/4 spread out before them in all its chaotic glory. The Hogwarts Express sat gleaming and scarlet, steam rising from its engine, surrounded by hundreds of students and their families. The noise was incredible, owls hooting, cats yowling, parents shouting last-minute instructions, and underneath it all, the excited chatter of children about to embark on their magical education. Mashallah, Amina breathed, her voice filled with wonder. It is more beautiful than I imagined. Harry had to agree. After the sterile normalcy of King's Cross, platform 9 3/4 felt like stepping into a dream. Students were loading trunks onto the train, some wearing robes, others in Muggle clothes, all of them vibrating with excitement. Come, Farid said, let us find you boys a good compartment before the train fills up. As they made their way through the crowd, Harry noticed the stairs. Not the usual stairs they were used to as the boy who lived, but the curious, sometimes wary glances directed at the El-Waziri family. It was subtle, a mother pulling her child closer, a father's slight frown, whispered conversations that stopped when they passed. You get used to it, Ramad said quietly, noticing Harry's expression. The staring. It's not all bad, sometimes people are just curious. But yeah, it happens. That's not fair, Harry said, feeling a familiar surge of anger at injustice. Life rarely is, Amina replied philosophically. But we do not let the ignorance of others determine our joy. Today, my son begins his magical education. I will not let prejudice dim that light. They found an empty compartment halfway down the train, and Farid helped them load their trunks. Amina immediately began unpacking what appeared to be a small grocery store's worth of snacks from her bag. Mama, I told you, they have food on the train, Ramad protested. They have British food on the train, Amina corrected. These are proper snacks. Dates, nuts, halal jerky, and your favourite marmol cookies. Also, I packed some extra to share with new friends. She turned to Harry, pressing a small package into their hands. For you, dear. I was not sure of your dietary restrictions, but these are made with love. Harry felt their eyes water again. Thank you. Nobody's ever packed me food before. The compartment fell silent at that admission. Farid and Amina exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Well, Amina said firmly, now someone has. And you will never go hungry again if I have anything to say about it. Mama's already adopted you, Ramad said with a grin. Fair warning, she's going to want to feed you constantly now. There are worse fates, Harry said, clutching the package of cookies. The train whistle blew, and parents began saying their goodbyes. Amina hugged Ramad tightly, whispering prayers and instructions in Arabic that made him roll his eyes but hug her back just as fiercely. Remember, she said, switching to English, pray 5 times a day, eat only halal food, respect your teachers, make good friends, and study hard. But most importantly, remember who you are and where you come from. I will, Nama. I promise. Farid clasped his son's shoulder. Be proud of your heritage, but do not let it become a wall between you and others. Build bridges, not barriers. Yes, Baba. As the family prepared to leave, Amina turned to Harry one last time. You too, dear. Remember that you are not alone in this world. There are people who will accept you for exactly who you are, you just have to be brave enough to find them. Harry nodded, not trusting their voice. The train began to move, and Harry and Ramad leaned out the window to wave goodbye to the Al-Waziri family. As the platform disappeared behind them, Harry felt something they hadn't experienced in a long time, hope. So, Ramad said, settling back into his seat, want to share those cookies while you tell me what it's like being famous? Harry laughed, opening the package. The cookies were incredible, sweet and nutty and still warm. Honestly? It's not that great. I'd rather just be normal. Normal is overrated, Ramad said, accepting a cookie. Normal is boring. Normal is what people say when they're too lazy to understand something different. The Dursleys would hate you, Harry said with a grin. Good. I'd hate them right back. Ramad paused. Your family, they're not accepting of your identity. Harry's smile faded. That's putting it mildly. They think I'm mentally ill. Or doing it for attention. Or both. I'm sorry, Ramad said simply. That must be incredibly difficult. It is. But meeting your family, it gives me hope that maybe there are people out there who will understand. There are, Ramad assured them. Trust me, as someone who's dealt with prejudice my whole life, I can tell you that for every person who hates you for being different, there's another person who will love you for exactly the same reason. Harry felt a warmth in their chest that had nothing to do with the cookies. Your parents seem amazing. They are. They immigrated here when I was little, and they've always taught us that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. When I told them I was going to a magical school, Mama immediately started researching Islamic perspectives on magic. Did you know there are actually Quranic verses about jinn and supernatural abilities? Really? Yeah. She's convinced that magic is just another one of Allah's gifts, like intelligence or artistic ability. She says it would be disrespectful not to use it to help others. Harry marvelled at the contrast between Ramad's accepting family and their own situation. The Dursleys think magic is evil. They hate everything about the wizarding world. Well, they're wrong. And you know what? Once you get to Hogwarts, you'll never have to go back to them if you don't want to. The wizarding world becomes your home. You really think so? I know so. My parents did their research. Hogwarts has a surprisingly good track record with students from unconventional backgrounds. Apparently, there are already several openly LGBTQ+ students, and the school has policies about preferred names and pronouns. Harry's heart leaped. Really? Really? The magical world might be old-fashioned in some ways, but they've always been more accepting of what Muggles consider abnormal. After all, we can turn people into toads. Gender identity is hardly the weirdest thing they've dealt with. For the first time since coming out to the Dursleys, Harry felt genuinely excited about their future. This is going to be amazing, isn't it? Absolutely, Ramad agreed, pulling out a small prayer rug. Speaking of which, it's time for Dear Prayer. Do you mind if I? Of course not, Harry said quickly. Do what you need to do. As Ramad began his prayers, speaking quietly in Arabic, Harry looked out the window at the British countryside rushing past. They thought about the Al-Waziri family's kindness, about Ramad's easy acceptance, about the possibility of finding a place where they could be themselves without apology. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something wonderful. The train carried them toward Hogwarts, toward a future where being different might actually be a strength rather than a burden. And for the first time in months, Harry Potter allowed themselves to truly believe that everything was going to be okay. Allahu Akbar, Ramad murmured, finishing his prayers. Amen to that, Harry whispered, and meant it with all their heart.